Hello, everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stratch Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the new Sona Taric bot lane and discussing whether or not it's going to be strong in solo queue and whether or not it's something that you should consider picking up, since there have been some pro teams recently picking this up. So you can always find access to this Google Doc in the description that we're going to be going over, so you can kind of skim along, find your favorite parts, reread it if you want to think about it later, and then I'll also have timestamps in the description so you can jump around your favorite parts as well. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. It's free. It's easy. Just takes a couple of clicks. It really helps other people find this content and learn and enjoy to the same degree that I hope you will as well. So let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, so why are Sona and Taric being picked in the bottom lane lately? Well, I've seen this a couple of times. I think it started out in EU, and then we've seen it in North America, and we've seen some variation of this in Korea as well several times. So let's go ahead and go into what the general premise is here and how it works. Okay, so Sona works really well with AP. That's never really been a secret. You see lots of AP Sonas in your solo queue games going things like tier into Lich Bane into Death Cap and things like that. It hasn't historically worked in solo queue a lot of the time, and I'll explain why here in just a little bit. It has to do with scaling different item power spikes and momentum in the bot lane. But if you are getting a main gold source of income, then it actually can work for Sona because she does have such high ratios, right? So if you look at her Q, for example, if this hits 2 people, which it's almost always going to hit 2 people in a team fight, that's 320 base damage with a 1.0 AP ratio that ends up being on a 5-second cooldown, which is insane if you just thought of that as a normal mage, right? It's like, wow, 320, and it only costs 70 mana? You're getting like a crazy return on that. And that doesn't even include the aura. If you just aura up yourself and just attack once, you're getting an extra 30% with an extra 30. So now we're talking a 350 base with a 1.3 ratio if it's just you attacking. And then obviously in a team fight, this can go up to 5 times, right? So you get an extra 1.5 ratio off of that. So you can end up getting a 2.5 AP ratio in a team fight, something that does a 470 base damage, which is really, really good, obviously, in team fights. Then you have her aura of perseverance. This is something a lot of people really underestimate as well. You're always going to heal 2 people with this. That's a 50% AP ratio. But then if you tag 5 people, that's an extra 150%. So now you're getting a 2.0 ratio on this in a team fight as well. You're healing for 220, and then you're shielding for an additional 625. So you're getting about 850 healing and shielding off of this. And it starts off on a 6-second cooldown. You get a free, by the time you get to level 11, you get a free 25% on that. Then if you get an extra 30% CDR, so you can really quickly get down to a 3 or 4 second cooldown. It's important to note that this stacks multiplicatively rather than additively with Crescendo, so it's not quite as crazy as it sounds. So if you have 40% CDR, and then you get your 40% cooldown at level 16 off of this, it's not an 80% total cooldown on your ability. How this works is if you have a 100-second cooldown on something, it would check the first 40%, take it down to 60 seconds on the cooldown, and then it would take 40% of the 60 and not 40% of the next 100. And so that means that you would only get 24 reduction on that. So then that would take that down to 36 seconds. So, the 40... If it was additive, the 40 plus 40, if you had a 100-second cooldown, would take it all the way down to a 20-second cooldown. But because it's multiplicative, it's only going down to a 36-second cooldown, which is still really good. It's just not as overpowered as this might seem. But anyways, that's why she's really strong, and she provides a really nice movement buff as well. Okay, so she has the AP scaling potential. That's great. So that's kind of step 1 there. The other thing, though, is how to abuse this in the lane, right? And so if you use Frostfang, they lowered the completion on Frostfang, and it procs very easily off of Q. So you can spam that Q, which we just talked about before, and even if you can't get into auto attack range, maybe it's too dangerous, maybe you're against an all-in lane, or maybe you're afraid the jungler is going to come and camp you, this still has 825 range on it. So you can still very safely proc the Hymn of Valor, even if you can't get the auto attack in there. So it allows you to charge up your Frostfang really, really quickly. And there were a few patches ago where people were abusing Frostfang in the top lane and the mid lane, and what they did to nerf it was they said, okay, you have to be near another champion to get the extra gold off of this, but in exchange for that, we're lowering the completion time to 450. So now you can actually complete it at 450 instead of 500, which means it's going to come online maybe about a minute or so faster. Okay, so you can sit there and, spam your Qs and charge up your Frostfang really quickly. If you pair this together with Taric, who's a melee support, then he can go Targons, and then he can just rush the tier 3 Targons to get Eye of the Equinox, and then he is going to be taking a lot of the CS early on, but it's still going to be giving gold over to you, so you're not losing a ton of gold off of that. You're still getting Targon's procs, or you're still getting Frostfang procs, rather. And the Frostfang, I believe they increased the gold also that it gets. Let me just look. Sorry, I forgot to look that up really quick. League, Frostfang. Let's look at that. But I believe they increased the gold by like 3 or 4 that you get off of this, so not only does it complete at a faster rate, but they also changed the amount of gold. Okay, so it's 22. Yeah, 50 off the combined cost, and you're getting an extra 2 per. So that means that this, every time you proc this Frostfang, then it's going to be roughly worth a little bit more than a melee minion. I think melee minions are about 18 gold each. Then if we look at Frostfang, you get an extra charge back. I believe it's every 30 seconds. Let's see, Frostfang, blah, blah, blah. Grants a charge every 10 seconds. Up to 3 charges. Okay, so you can get fully charged after 30 seconds. But every 10 seconds, you're getting 22 gold off of that, right? And so a minion wave comes every 30 seconds. So if you're cashing in these 3 charges every time, you're getting 66 gold. A normal minion wave, let me just look this up. League, minion gold. I think the small ones are like 14 now, and the large ones are a little bit more. Okay. The melees are 21, actually, and then the casters are 14. Okay, so if you look at the normal melees are 21, then that's 63. So basically, those charges are pretty much what you're getting off of Frostfang, right? You're getting 66 off of Frostfang. So if you're triggering 3 Frostfangs every 30 seconds, that's the same thing as last hitting all of those melee minions, except you get to spread that gold out to other people now. Now, Taric can go up and hit those melee minions, and then that's going to give you the gold that you would have missed anyways by not last hitting it, and it's giving Taric the gold, right? So now you're generating even more gold income than you had in the past. So instead of just, if you were a normal 80 carry hitting this and getting, just getting the 63 there, then now Taric can get the 63, and you get the extra 66 off of the Frostfang proc. So you're effectively getting double gold early on off of your melee minions. Now, you are losing out on 54 gold off of the caster minions. You would still take the cannon minions with the strat, by the way, so it will put you slightly behind, but you still always last hit the cannon minions if you're the primary gold generator, if you're the Sona in the Sona Taric matchup. So you're not going to be losing out on that gold. So you still hit the cannons, but you're losing the 54 here. But what do you get in exchange for losing that 54 gold? Okay, well, you are allowing the Frostfang to stack up so that you can get that throughout the entire game, right? So if you can stack up your Frostfang by 10 minutes or so, maybe you've lost like 500 gold during that time. But if you think about the rest of the game now, you're going to be able to stack up the Frostfang after you've completed it and continue to get gold the entire time, as well as getting 3 more wards, which we'll talk about here in a second. Then that ends up becoming worth it in the long run a lot of times. And it's not like that gold gets completely wasted. It's going to Taric as well, who's going to be building some items that are going to help you out. So it's helping your team generate a ton of extra gold at the price of you having a slightly slower trajectory early on in the gold, right? So your gold generation is going to be slightly slower early on, but in exchange, your entire team is generating more gold. And this is also where Kleptomancy comes in, and she's such a great user of Kleptomancy because she's ranged and she can spam abilities really quickly, right, to get extra Klepto procs. So that's another part of it, is if you can just get some bags of gold, Klepto by the end of a lot of games is going to give you maybe 1,000 gold, and even in the laning phase, usually going to give you 400 or 500 gold. Now, that's a lot, right? So if you think about, all right, you're missing 52 or whatever the number was, 54 gold per minion wave, right? Off of those ranged minions that you're not going to hit. You're missing it personally, although Taric's picking it up once again. You're missing it personally. Well, that's 100 gold per minute. And if the laning phase lasts 5 minutes or whatever, maybe it's going to last a little bit longer than that. That's 500 gold. So you're going to make up most of that with Klepto until you get your Frostfang charges going. If on average you're going to have like 500 gold with Klepto during the laning phase, which is very common on someone like Sona who can trigger this really quickly. So Klepto is going to, in many ways, kind of negate what you're losing. You're going to lose very, very little personal gold off of this if you have Frostfang and Klepto rolling in. And then once you complete the Frostfang, then you can get the CS and you can harass and you can get Klepto. So you're breaking about even in the early game in terms of gold, maybe falling slightly behind in terms of personal gold, but in the long run, you're generating a ton of extra gold, and you're getting a lot of extra gold with your team. A thing to note about this as well is these Frostfang ticks and the klepto ticks do not count towards your overall bounty. CS does count towards your bounty. So you're generating a lot of extra free gold for your team that is never given back to the enemy team through bounties. Right, and you're generating a lot of extra potions, too. We're just talking about gold here, but you get a lot of extra health potions, mana potions. You can get wards early on. You can get those little small elixirs that give you great trading in terms of extra AP, extra on-hit damage, extra health. So this allows you to really apply a lot of pressure, particularly to melee support. So if they have something like a Braum, a Tom, you know, an Alistar, or even something that's going to be, you know, kind of passive in the laning phase a lot of times, like maybe a Janna or something that's not really going to hit you back super hard in the early game, you can really abuse this early on. So that's kind of the engine around pro play and why this has worked, is you generate a lot of extra gold. Most of it doesn't go towards your bounty, and you only marginally give up a little bit of scaling in terms of your team. Okay, so this means you get a lot of gold, okay? So you can actually afford to complete a Seraphs. We'll talk about the gold efficiency and how this compares to support here in just a second. But you get a lot of gold off of this. You can get Seraphs, you can get Lichbane, you can get Deathcap a lot faster than Sona would usually get that. And she scales so hard, as we just talked about a second ago. Also, and this is particularly good for pro play, but even in solo queue, this could be all right, is the double ward item, right? You're going to have a completed gold ward item. Taric's going to have a ward item. This is breaking what Riot's trying to do with Vision over the last couple of years, which is really limit Vision to allow more opportunities for ganks, to introduce more uncertainty so that more big plays can be made. Because back in the day when everybody could just buy a bunch of wards, people would play really safe, and it wasn't uncommon in a lot of pro games for them to go to like 45 minutes to an hour on average, really long time. Think about the Azubu Frost, I think it was the semifinals, which is one of the longest games in League history. I think that was Season 2 or Season 3. You know, it was like an hour or something, right? It was a very, very long game, and that was really common back then. And the main reason for that is there were wards everywhere. The entire map was warded. And you spend a lot of the game trying to clear out those wards as a support, and just everyone else on your team would be trying to clear the wards, but be so many wards everywhere all the time, it was just almost impossible to make plays as a jungler. And so you just have these really support-style junglers. You'd have like your Malakais in the jungle and your Nunus and things like that, and just kind of give up on the ganking early and just try to scale for team fighting late because everybody had vision of everything. Okay, so this is kind of breaking what Riot's tried to do, which is limit vision so that big plays can be made. Well, now you basically have double vision, right? Because you're going to have all of these Frostfang wards later on, and you're just going to be able to get a ton of vision across the whole map, and it's going to be really, really hard for the enemy team to clear all of that out, especially if everybody's also buying control wards and all of that kind of stuff. And that frees you up to take a sweeper as well if you want to on the AD carry. You can still take your blue trinket if you want, but now you can have double ward items and double sweepers, which can be really, really powerful. Okay, another thing about Sona in general is that you will win most long team fights because you're just going to be able to spam that heal over and over again. And as I always say on the channel, if you've ever watched the stream, which check it out, it's usually around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights. It's a great community. I try to be as interactive as possible. It's a lot of fun, so check that out. But as I always talk about whenever I play Sona, if the fight goes longer than 5 seconds, even just with Sona, you're going to win. If it's a team fight, if they don't kill you immediately. Because you're talking about, like we mentioned here, this is before we even really get into the AP scaling or the scaling with plus healing and shielding or revitalize or any of that stuff. We're talking about this is already doing like 850 shield that's basically going to be on a 4 second cooldown, 3 or 4 second cooldown. And when you start, you know, taking AP into account and plus healing and shielding and revitalize and all that kind of stuff, this can very easily get to like 1200 effective health for a team. So, you know, if it goes to 4 or 5 seconds and you get 2 of these off, you're effectively giving your team like an extra 2,500 health. It's just like insane value. And you can't keep up with that in a lot of fights. It's just crazy, especially if you get things like Ardent Sensor as a support Sona, you know, Ardent Sensor, Athenes. All of that is just nutty. Like, there's just no way that you can lose the fight if they don't blow up somebody immediately because you just give too many bonuses to everybody. With this strategy, you double down on that with Taric. I mean, Taric has a similar, although not quite as brutal, but a similar sort of profile where if the fight goes long, he can just keep auto-attacking and spamming his heal and just constantly healing up his team, you know, putting up shields off of his W, which is going to lower the cooldown as he just turns out more and more auto-attacks in these fights. And then Taric also has the ability, obviously, to press his ult as well, which is going to buy you time. You know, as your team takes that first round of damage, it's going to be really, really hard to burst people out, you know, whenever somebody gets to 50% or whatever and Taric's shield ends up triggering. That's going to give more time for Taric and Sona to catch everyone up to full again. And now the enemy team's already used their burst. They've already used their engage. They're running away by this point to get away from the invulnerable team. And you've got Sona and Taric just sitting there spamming shields and heals on everybody. You're never going to win a team fight against this once they get to 2 or 3 items. And so they're both very, very good in long fights, and this makes it extremely difficult to assassinate Sona. Taric's pretty tough to kill, too, in general, just because, you know, he gets a lot of armor and he has higher base stats. But most of the reason why people don't play Sona in pro play is because she's very squishy. She's easy to kill. Well, now you're going to have your own shields. You're going to have a lot of AP buffing that up, but you're also going to have Taric, who can put the W on you. Taric, who can cast his ult to save you. He can also heal you. So it just gets really, really nasty. And then if you have Archangels with the shield, you can shield yourself. And so it just gets really, really gross really quickly. In terms of just how difficult it is to kill the Sona or the Taric. And if you don't kill either one of them, then your team's going to lose the team fight. So that's why if you want to go for kind of a scaling team fight 5v5 comp, this is virtually unbeatable if you get to the mid game off of that, just because of how well these two scale and how much extra gold they're generating in that bot lane through that tactic that we just talked about. You're getting so much extra gold. They never get it back. It doesn't go into bounties. You also apply a lot of pressure with Sona in the laning phase too. That's a lot of harassment. Especially if it's backed by poke and just like endless sustain. They can't ever trade with you because you're going to win because you have so many heals and shields. So they have to come down there and try to gank you, right? But it's very hard to do that because you're just going to be so resilient a lot of the time. And if they don't come down there to gank you, that means you're going to be taking tower plates, you know, because if you force the enemy out of lane, you're going to be grabbing 1 or 2 plates early. Once again, tower plates also, they never recoup that, right? That tower gold never goes towards bounties. You're going to also have priority in the lane, so you can go contest scuttles, so you can go get dragons, you can get deep wards in the enemy jungle. You're going to have these 6 wards. You can just light up the entire bot side of the map with wards. And so it just creates a ton of pressure. It just has virtually unbeatable team fighting later on in the game, particularly if you include this with someone else who can engage and start fights and just force the issue with Taric. So if you have something like a Hecarim or Jarvan or something like that, who are both very popular right now, then just, you know, starting the fight and then just having Taric ult your team, run in there really quickly with Sona as well with her E, especially when it's empowered by a bunch of AP, and then just spamming all of your stuff. It's just a very, very difficult comp to beat. Okay, so why are pros playing this now and they haven't played this in the past? Well, there's a lot less all-in pressure in the lanes. That's number one. First of all, it's weird, so it probably took people some time just to even think about trying this. But second of all, there have been structural things in the game. This would not have been as good 6 months ago. Okay, so it's not like people just never noticed this for years. There have been some specific changes that we're going to go over right now that have contributed to this. So number one, there's less all-in presence in lane. So you're seeing a lot less Jhin in pro play, who was really popular a few months ago. You're still seeing some Draven, but in general, people are playing a lot of scaling champs. You're still seeing a lot of Ezreal. You're seeing a lot of Kai'Sa. You're seeing some Vayne sometimes. Sometimes you're seeing things like Jinx. But Lucian has fallen out of favor quite a bit. You still see him some, but he has been nerfed to an extent. And you're seeing just less Jhin, less Lucian. There have been nerfs to Ignite. So Ignite doesn't do as much damage as it used to. So that makes things like Heal and Barrier a lot stronger, which is usually what the Sona and Taric will take. One of them will take Heal. I guess usually the Taric would take the Heal and then the Sona would take the Barrier. So that makes those a lot more appealing. I think they directly buffed Heal also. I think they lowered the cooldown on that. They buffed Heal or Barrier, I can't remember, and they nerfed Ignite. Then Dark Harvest has been nerfed a lot. You've seen things like Electrocute has been nerfed. A lot of these like all-in burst kind of runes have been nerfed. Things like Zyra have been nerfed. That was never super popular in pro play, but in solo queue, Zyra was very strong, kind of the Zyra brand meta of the preseason. And a really big one is Stormrazor has been nerfed. So Stormrazor was just a super oppressive item for about 6 months there, and it was so good as a single item power spike that you could just immediately blow up a lot of these squishy champions because you just had so much upfront burst. But now almost everybody's a 2-item champ. You know, a lot of people are going to be rushing Blather and King, which is nice. It gives sustain. It's got a nice build-up, but it does not have the same kind of burst once it's completed as Stormrazor had, particularly if you pair it with champions like Jhin. And so that means that a lot of champions now have to get Blather and King plus Ginsu's to really come online, or they want Infinity Edge plus, you know, one other item, plus Hurricane or plus Rapid Fire Cannon or whatever. And so that means you have more time to scale. You have more time to bully them in lane because they're not going to have this like all-powerful burst. item off of their first item most of the time, right? So most AD carries scale off of 2 items now, and you're seeing a lot less mages too. You know, for a while there, you were seeing some stuff like Cassiopeia in the bot lane. Occasionally, you're seeing Yasuo in the bot lane. You're seeing Karthus in the bot lane. Some of these champions that really performed a lot better off of single item power spikes, like Ludens, for example, you're seeing a lot less of that. So that gives you more time to scale. That gives you more time to put this plan into action if you want to play something like Sona Taric, because once again, you have to burst them. In long fights, it's not going to work. You have to have a ton of damage up front to kill them. So this just creates an environment where this kind of strategy is going to be a lot stronger. Another thing is there's less jungle pressure overall in the early game. You know, we're not seeing as many like Camille's every single game. We still see some Lees, but you don't see Lee every single game. A lot of these champs are going more towards kind of these level 6 junglers, right? You've got your Kindred, your Olaf, your Jarvan. Yes, these champions can do some stuff early on. Yes, Jarvan does have a pretty brutal level 2 if you want to go in early, but it's not the same thing as like Xin Zhao, right? Back in the preseason, it's not the same thing as Lee or Camille and a lot of these other champions. Even like the Kha'Zix, right? Kha'Zix was a terror before they nerfed Electrocute. I think they may have nerfed him directly a little bit. I can't remember. But it used to be a lot more of these like level 2 or level 3. You're just going to get hard ganked and just exploded, right? Not seeing as much of that anymore. Once again, these champs do have some game early on, but Kindred's going to be looking for her mark early on. You're going to get a pass for the first few levels a lot of times, unless the mark's really close to you. And if it is, you know to be on the lookout, right? J4, yes, he does have a nice level 2, level 3, but really like his main power is going to come online once he's level 6. Same thing with Olaf. So that's just created an environment also where this type of strategy can thrive early. Okay, so let's talk about, is this actually good in solo queue? Should you be building this stuff on Sona, right? Should you be getting Archangels and Lich Bane and Deathcap and all that stuff in Sona? So should you be trying out the Taric Sona bot lane? I'm going to say probably not. You know, if you have a friend and you practice this with them, it can work, but you really have to have, it's a team effort, right? It's a very specific composition. Like I said before, usually with this, you need some kind of hard engage. You need something like a Hecarim, something like a Jarvan, so that you can really start a fight early on with this Taric. This strategy can be really weak to split pushing if you don't have a good split pusher. So if you're trying to force team fights with things like Sona, Taric, neither one of them starts fights that well a lot of times. And, I mean, like, Sona can flash ult and stuff like that, but it's kind of contrived for them to start fights. And so if you have something like, if the enemy has something rather like a Jax or a Tryndamere or just something crazy that's going off in a side lane, it can be really difficult to deal with that because you're all in, you know, on this 5-on-5 team fight. And you can get blown up late game, right? If you try to rotate with Sona and try to go see if you can help out with the Jax or something, you can get obliterated. So you really have to have your team with you, and you really have to be able to force these 5v5s. Also, if the enemy jungler camps you, it can still be a real problem, especially early on. Taric and Sona don't have a lot of they don't have a lot of escapes. You know, they can heal and shield, but let's be real. If they get behind you, if Kha'Zix, you know, creeps in behind you and the enemy has a Leona on their team, you're in big trouble. And so if your allies don't draft lanes that are going to get priority, if they're just going to get run over in their lanes and the enemy jungler gets to just sit bottom, like that's going to be a problem. Or if your jungler picks like an AFK farm jungler, you know, they pick Master Yi or a Mumu or something, and the enemy team picks a Jarvan or picks something else, it's, you know, going to be going to have a bit more competitiveness in the early game. I know I said he's level 6, but he's also pretty good, level 2 or 3, depending on the matchup. That's going to be a problem. So if they don't force the action, right, if your team doesn't have something to make that jungler go somewhere else, if your jungler is going to be applying 0 pressure to the enemy jungler, then and they can camp you, that's a huge problem. And it's going to be very difficult for you to farm as well. So that's the thing, is it requires a very specific comp. It requires patience. There's going to be a lot of people that maybe haven't seen this in pro play, and they're going to think you're trolling. And if anything at all goes bad in this game, if you get caught and killed twice in the bot lane as Sona or whatever, you'll have people that just rage or even AFK on you with this strategy. And that's always a risk whenever you do something that's non-meta, is if stuff starts not going your way, it can really hurt the mental state of your team, right? And people give up a lot more easier, where if you are a lot easier rather. But if you're playing something like Vayne, people know that champion scales. People know that champion can perform at a high level later on, right? So even if you die a couple of times early as Vayne and someone's freaking out mid lane, hey bot, quit dying, say, my bad, man, you know, we scale up, I'll stop dying, we can do this. you know, and they'll believe that narrative because they've seen it. They're familiar with it. They know Vayne comes online and she's strong, right? Or they know Twitch comes online and he's strong. But if you're Sona Taric and you die a couple of times in lane, you're saying, hey, man, chill, we scale, you know, it's okay. And mid laner is going to say, no, you don't, you're against Vayne or whatever, right? So even if maybe your team could win a 5v5, it's difficult for people to grasp that a lot of times, and it can really hurt the mental. So that's a reason, you know, why this can be difficult in solo queue. You have to have the right comp. It can cause some tension with your team. It's weak to aggro junglers or really fed assassins. If they have a 5-0 Zed that's just going to camp you and keep killing you as Sona before you can get the appropriate items, that's a problem. You know, in pro play, you don't have to worry about that. You know, there's not going to be a 5-0 Zed mid lane in most pro matches. In solo queue, it's a lot more common to see a really fed assassin or hyper carry that you have to try to deal with. This strategy can be very, very weak to that. Because, yes, it can mitigate a lot of damage if it gets the items, right? You have to have several items. You have to have your Archangels as Sona. You really need Taric, you know, to have some additional plus healing and shielding to help you out. You need more levels so that you have more health and armor. So it can that just makes it a little bit trickier. Also, you need to have strong use of that vision. Okay, you're going to get 6 wards. Well, if you never place those wards in your Sona, that's an issue. Or if you don't make really good use of that, right? Or if your support never uses their wards, that's an issue. One thing that makes this really strong in pro play that we mentioned before is you get 6 wards, and pros are going to maximize the usage of that. They're going to know exactly where to place those extra wards. They're going to have it coordinated, and they're going to do something useful with that vision. If you're not really using the extra vision, the extra wards, and you're losing out on a lot of power of this build. So that's another thing that potentially could go wrong. So you want to make sure you're optimizing that, which once again is going to take practice. You're going to have to tell the jungler, hey, I'm really squishy, I need to go place these wards, come with me. Or the mid laner, hey, protect me while I go get these deep wards in the enemy jungler. Pro players do that all the time. They have that buddy system, they understand that, that's natural. But if you're just playing in, you know, silver and you're just sitting there on these like wards as Sona and you're like, man, I can't go ward because the map is really dark, we just lost a team fight, no one's helping me, then that can be very difficult to get optimal ward placements. So that's another thing that could be tricky. So this can work. It just, I would say at a minimum, try to find a duo that's going to play that Taric so they're on board with it. They know what to do. And then preferably you would want to save this for like flex queue, or if they ever bring back whatever that thing is, any kind of organized play. Then that could work. Now let's talk about the build on Sona here real quick, and then we'll wrap up because I don't want this video to be too long. But is this an optimal build on Sona? This is not an optimal build on just straight up solo queue Sona, okay? So if you're just playing Sona, you just first pick her and your ally picks Draven or something, and you're not going for the strategy, do not do this. This is a very specific thing with Sona and Taric in a highly organized, you know, type of atmosphere where you're going to be able to take advantage of the things that we just talked about, okay? The main reason for this is you do not have a steady income stream as support Sona. That's why that Sona is only getting played in pro play with this build as a substitute for the AD carry, because you get farm, okay? You never see a pro Sona player going in with Kleptomancy rushing Archangels or Lichbane, okay? You've never ever seen that in pro play, ever. You know, in past seasons, season 1, season 2, you know, the stuff was really different back then, right? But the theme was similar. You get support stuff, right? You would get your Aegis of the Legion, or you would just get a bunch of wards and Oracle's Elixir or whatever, because you don't have the economy, okay? Gold matters a lot. So if you are a substitute AD carry Sona, you're going to get like 200 CS in the game. That's 3,500 gold. That's a lot of gold. That's a really, really big deal if you don't have that gold. And the main reason that you don't want to get this, it's like, is she good with those items as support? Yes, it's the same items, it's the same champion no matter what, but the gold income sort of determines what your trajectory is on the game, what your momentum is, right? And it sort of defines your power spikes and when you can make specific plays and specific moves on the map. If you have a really bad power spike timing, then you're going to be really weak for very large windows of the game, and you're going to lose a lot of opportunities to leverage advantages and take advantage. So let me just look at this really quickly. So your components are really weak without synergy, okay? Tier offers very little without Archangel. And then Lichbane and Deathcap are really weak without a lot of AP. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. If you want to know more about this, I explain the power of Athene's and Ardent Censer for about 5 or 10 minutes. It's in one of my tier list videos. I have a link right here directly to where I talk about this. So you don't have to watch the whole thing, although it is a great video if you do want to watch the whole thing. But if you just want to watch 5 or 10 minutes and really see the math and the breakdown behind Athene's and Ardent, be sure to click on this link in the Google Doc. I've got it right here for you. But I'm just going to give you a quick TLDR version here. Okay, so Tier of the Goddess, if we look here at tier, you're paying 850 gold for just mana. There's no CDR on this. There's no AP on this. There's nothing. Okay, and you might think, well, I need a lot of mana as Sona. You know, she goes through a lot of mana. That's true, you do. But you know what else gives mana? Every single support item that you're going to get, right? Frostfang's going to give you 50%. If you go for Athene's, which is what I recommend rushing on Sona, that's going to give you 100%. You're going to have Mana Flow Band. And then if you get Redemption after Athene's, which is what I usually recommend as well, that's going to give you an extra 150%. So if you get, you know, Redemption plus Athene's plus Frostfang, you're going to have 300% mana regen. Okay, so Sona starts with 12 mana per 5. It goes up per level as well. And by the time you complete these items, you're going to get 15 mana per 5. Then you're going to be getting, you know, 3 times that, right? Because you're going to be getting 300%. So you're getting 45 mana per 5. That's 9 mana every second. So if you think about 1 minute, 9 times 60 or whatever, that's 540. That's 540 per minute. Okay, and you have to go back and get wards about every 2 minutes because your wards are going to expire at 2.5 minutes, and you need to have more wards down, and it's going to take you about 30 seconds to back, grab your wards, and then run to the place where you don't place them because you don't want your wards to go down before you replace them because that's going to make it dark. It's going to make it unsafe to go and try to replace those wards. So every 2 minutes, you're going to have to go replace, right? So times 2, 1,000 mana. Are you going to burn through 1,000 mana in 2 minutes as Sona? Probably not. I mean, what would you have to do to burn through that? I mean, this is 70 mana, right? You would have to have like 10 casts of this or something. More than that. You'd have to have like 15 casts of this to run through that, right? And it's already going to have, you know, like a 4-second cooldown. So you would have to spam this literally on cooldown for like 1 minute straight before you went through that much mana regen. And that doesn't even include what your base mana is. That's just your mana regen. So when you come in, you're probably going to have at least 1,000 base mana, if not more than that at this point, depending on your level. You're level 9, you're level 10, whatever. What's her base mana? At level, let's just say level 11. Her base mana is 735. Okay, so if you're regenning the 1,000, you're getting up to like whatever, 1,800. It's getting pretty close to like you could almost literally just spam this, your Q, on cooldown for 2 minutes straight. Just press it every single time. And you would almost make it the entire 2 minutes to do it. You'd make it to like somewhere around like 130 or 145. You don't need more mana than that. You're not going to be spamming it like that. You're going to be walking around. You're going to be warding. You're going to be rotating between lanes. You're going to be posturing with your team, like waiting on someone to engage. You're not going to be spamming that the whole time. And you're not going to be using your W unless you're taking damage. So it's like, yeah, maybe like in some situations, if it's literally just an ARAM, a non-stop fight in the middle of the lane, like in mid lane for 2 minutes straight, yes, you might run out of mana. If you're constantly just hammering the keyboard like Q, W, E, just constantly, you might run out of mana. But like in real life scenarios where, you know, you might only actually be fighting for maybe 30 seconds out of the 2 minutes, that's pretty aggressive, right? A lot of it's going to be posturing. You're not going to run out of mana. You just don't need that much mana early on, right? Like back in the day, you know, you might say, well, people did get tier back in the day. You know, it was really popular back in Season 7. Yes, but that's because Athene's was a far worse item back then, and Tier of the Goddess was far better. It used to cost 100 gold less. And it used to stack a lot faster. In addition, it was a really powerful 2-item meta. So you just wanted to get your tier online, and then you wanted to get your redemption and your locket as fast as possible back in the day, right? And locket doesn't have any mana regen on it, okay? You have to remember that, no mana regen. So all that you had was redemption, okay? And so having tier helps you out so that you only had 1 mana item. Whereas now, in 2019, every item that you get is going to have mana regen. You're going to get Frostfang, you're going to get Athene's, you're going to get Ardent Censer, and you're going to get Redemption. All 4 of those are going to have mana on it. And you have things like Mana Flow Band, which help you out a ton. And you have things like buffed up Water Drakes and things like that that are going to help you out as well. So there are so many more mechanisms for mana in 2019 than there were in 2017 that you just do not need the mana off of this anymore. So people get this in pro play because, like I said, you're building up to Archangels, and that is strong. A lot of that is because you get the shield, and it does become efficient once you complete Seraphs, once you get all of this. But the issue is you're going to have long windows of just worthless gold, right? This 850 is, it's worthless, right? Because it's not building towards something that you're going to get in a reasonable time frame early on. Lost Chapter, once again, that's a lot of mana. That's great. You're not running out of mana with your traditional support items. So you're getting a little bit of ability power. So far you've dropped like 2,100 gold or more. And all you're getting is 40 ability power and some gold, right? You are getting some CDR, right? You're getting 10% CDR off of this, so that's cool. But like you're getting 10% CDR and 40 ability power, right? Whereas for basically 2,100 gold. Whereas with this, you're getting 50 ability power to start with because it gets converted, and this has 100 mana regen on it, so it's going to give you 20 extra ability power. So you're getting 50 ability power, 10% cooldown reduction, 30 magic resist. You're getting mana off of it as well, mana regen, and you're basically getting somewhere between 30 to 50% plus healing and shielding. That's what this comes out to. I talked about that in that video. That is insane value. Insane value. So if you look at what that is, that's 170% efficient. That means when you spend 2,100 gold, that means you're basically getting like an extra 1,400 gold. That's like you're getting 4 kills. Almost 5 kills worth of gold. Like whenever you complete this item, it just says pentakill across your screen. Like that's the equivalent of power that you're getting. Straight up. Like that's what you're getting. And that's another thing that is not going to show up, is not going to be reflected in the bounties. The enemy team never gets that gold. They never get that efficiency back. So that is extremely powerful. Whereas if you compare this, even if you manage to complete, you know, Archangels, right? It's only 83% efficient, right? Once you get it like fully charged up, it's going to get to like, I don't know, maybe 140% efficient, but it's going to take you 15 minutes to charge this thing up a lot of the time. So whenever you complete it, it's way, way less gold. You're actually losing gold. When you complete this, you are losing gold. So that's the problem, is like, yeah, it's great if you can get to this quickly. Another thing is you're going to have huge chasms of just dead space. So once you complete these, you're going to have to wait for like an extra like 1,000 gold before you can complete Archangels. So while the enemy is, you know, completing Forbidden Idols, they're completing Aether Wisps or just like other cool stuff, you know, to fight in these team fights and have really good power spikes, to go contest dragons, scuttles, to position around Baron, to go siege, to do all this stuff on the map. You're sitting there with like 700 or 800 gold on several of your backs, and you're like, man, this sucks. I can't get anything because I have to try to complete Archangels. So that's the issue, is you're going to have these huge dead zones where you're going to lose a lot of momentum. The enemy support's going to be building up. They're going to be getting really cool and powerful items that are going to help them out. And you're going to be sitting there with just worthless gold in your bank that you can't spend because you're waiting on Archangels. And that's the story for a lot of these items too. If we look over at Lichbane, once again, going to have huge dead zones that suck. Right? Sheen, yes. Sheen is very nice. It does have a great active. It is powerful once you get it, right? It's a nice little spike in power, right? Aether Wisp, pretty decent. You know, it's going to give you movement speed, ability power, pretty good gold value. Blasting Wand sucks, right? You get some ability power, but it doesn't give you anything else. And once again, you're going to be waiting. There will be so many times where you back with like 500 gold or 600 gold, and you're like, well, crap, I guess I can't buy anything, so I'm waiting on this Blasting Wand. You know, or you have to buy an Amp Tome and disrupt your build, which sucks. And then you have to wait on Lichbane after that. So it's just got all of these components that just really aren't that great. And it's very inefficient. It's only 82% efficiency. It's like, yes, you do the Spellblade, and it is going to have some value on it, but does it have 100% efficiency and value? Is that thing worth, you know, 3,000 gold for this passive? I don't think so. So that's the problem. It's like this gets a lot better once you get way more AP, but AP is very expensive. Right? Death Cap is very expensive. All of these items are super expensive and inefficient unless you get a bunch of them in conjunction. Once you get Seraphs plus Lichbane plus Death Cap, yes, you do a lot of damage. Yes, that's powerful. Are you going to be able to afford that in most games? Probably not. If you can't afford it, you're already winning the game. That means your team's probably up like 50 to 20 and just isn't closing out for whatever reasons. They just don't have the macro, right? And so this is just like a win more kind of build, but it's not going to help you actually convert some of those wins. You basically have to get carried to make this build work most of the time. So that's the major issue, is you lose a lot of tempo. You're going to be sitting around with just miscellaneous gold in your bag, inefficient items, and it's just going to suck most of the time compared to something like, you know, Ardent Censer or Redemption or Athenes. All of these are far, far more efficient. So Athenes is about 170%, depending on how you use Redemption and when you get it. I've done the math on that before. That's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of like 170 to 200% efficient. Ardent Censer, depending on how many people you're buffing. And in a team fight, you can very easily buff all the people. The super rosy scenario for Ardent Censer is you can actually get close to like 400% efficiency, which is just insane. Basically, you're paying 2,300 gold to have like 8,000 gold in value off of Ardent Censer in the late game, right? Even if you're only buffing up a couple of people, it still is going to be really, really heavy value. So if we go over here and we look at something like Ardent Censer, you know, the rosiest of scenarios here is 380%. The absolute worst scenario, if you had this in your inventory at level 1 and you're only buffing up yourself and one other ally, is 150%. That is baseline. The absolute worst thing that can happen with this item is being 150% efficient. And the best that can happen is 400%. Now, once again, these aren't just like numbers. This actually translates into gold. You are netting your team gold. You're netting your team value. So when I say something like 300% efficiency on 2,300 gold, that means you're giving your team 4,600 gold worth of stats. Just to translate that in terms of kills, that's like you're giving your team an extra like 15 kills, right? So when you complete this item and it's in the mid game and you're buffing up a few people in a team fight, and you're getting this item to be 300% efficient, if the score is like 10 to 10, the score is actually 25 to 10. That's how you need to understand this. It's that powerful. That's what that means, gold efficiency. It means that you're generating power for your team equivalent to that gold. And that's real. Just because it doesn't say the stat on the scoreboard there, or just because it doesn't say that you've killed anybody. You know, your final score might be, you know, 1, 3, and 15 or something, right? But you effectively gave your team, you know, 15 kills by getting Ardent Censer. You gave your team, you know, an additional 8 kills or whatever by getting Athenes, right? So you're generating the equivalent of all of these kills, even if you don't actually have them on your scorecard. And that's what's so deceptive, and that's what's so powerful about support items, is people just don't know how they scale. They don't really respect item efficiency. They don't understand how that works. And so they'll see stuff that's really big, like, oh man, I can get like 500 AP. I saw this like all cap Sona video, or I saw this pro player getting all this power with AP Sona. It's like, yes, that's a stat you can visibly see. Yes, you just hit that person, you know, for like 800 damage in a game when you had Lichbane plus Seraphs plus Death Cap or something like that. That's a real thing. But it's that under the hood power. It's that hidden power that's difficult to see, which is actually even stronger for support because it's going to allow you to have much more tempo. You know, for example, if you were a Nami and you bought something like Athenes and the enemy Sona, you know, is just sitting on like Tear plus Blasting Wand or something like that, you are going to annihilate her if you're playing that correctly in terms of team fight contributions, if your team fights around Dragon, right? So that's the main issue, is no, it is not good unless you're absolutely going to completely annihilate them and get a ton of extra gold off of towers, and there's going to be like 40 kills in the game, and you're getting an assist on every single kill. It's like basically you're already winning the game if this build's going to be good. And so it's not going to help you win close games. It's going to actually hurt you in close games. Or definitely in games where you're behind, it's going to be terrible. So do not do that. Buy traditional, you know, items. And that's what you'll see over and over again if you watch like high-level players like Stunt in North America and some other like Sona One Tricks and Challenger that aren't doing the specific Terra Sona matchup, that are playing actual support Sona. You're going to see them buying the traditional items, right? You're going to see them buying some combination of Ardent Censer, Athenes, and Redemption. Okay. So just to end this up really quickly, why do we not see Taric more in lane? It's a low priority lane, so you can get pushed out. You can get bullied really easily early on. You don't have a lot of harass. You basically have to walk up to them and stun them most of the time. So he can be okay in the melee matchups. You know, if you're against an Alistar or a Pyke or something like that, yeah, I think Taric could be all right. But that is one of the problems, is that he has low priority. You can't really dictate anything in the lane unless you like get a flash stun, maybe. Which it's going to be a lot harder to dictate the lane. So it's going to kind of be out of your control. It's probably just going to be a farm off between 80 carries. And so you're losing a lot of your agency, a lot of your ability to control the game there. He also requires a lot of significant team coordination. So whenever you use your ult, the best way to use this is you want to be proactive where your team is charging in and like punishing the enemy, not allowing them to disengage. That's the biggest thing. So you want the Hecarim running in, or the Jarvan running in to dunk them, or whatever. Those champions are becoming more popular. So Taric, similarly, is also becoming more powerful and more popular because of those champions. But that has historically been sort of a major problem with Taric, is that he requires a lot of coordination, because the worst thing you can do is somebody's about to die, somebody gets jumped on, your team gets engaged on, and then you ult, and your team has to run away, or even in the worst case scenario, they actually kill the person before your ult goes off. That's terrible. Your ult is on a huge cooldown, and you don't have it anymore. You lose a lot of your power as Taric if your ult's on cooldown. So you have to really use it proactively and have a hard engaged champ and stuff that can lock down the enemy team so they can't run away. So it also doesn't work if you're just running forward as Taric and you activate your ult trying to start a fight, but no one on your team has any way to start a fight. They're just going to run away, right? So that's a major problem as well. And there's a lot of mobility in the game too. So that's really, you know, it's hard to lock down things like Vayne, Ezreal, Lucian, Tristana, you know, even Kai'Sa. All of these champions are just going to run away from you a lot of the time if you try to engage with a Taric ult. So that can potentially be a problem. He also has awkward itemization. So he requires a lot of mana to go through his rotation and just keep spamming Q and auto-attacking to lower your cooldowns. That's really your major engine, is you get like 2 points in Q. Then in team fights, you just constantly auto-attack people and just spam Q and just, you know, that lowers the cooldown on all your other abilities. And that takes a lot of mana to go through that. But he's very weak with a lot of mana items. So you really want Zeke's. But he has a long cooldown ult, and so that makes it really rough to get good value out of Zeke's, and Zeke's was nerfed a few patches ago. Redemption's pretty good, but that makes him very squishy. He does have some pretty decent base stats, but he doesn't have the mobility, and he has to get in really close in combat, unlike, you know, something like a Nami or a Sona that can kind of hang out further in the back. Taric's going to be getting hit by all the AoE, right? He's going to be getting hit by the Kennen ults and, you know, the Irelia ults and all that kind of stuff, the Hecarim ults. He's going to get beat down, right? Because he needs to melee people to lower the cooldown on his abilities. He's balanced around that. He's balanced around getting in their face and constantly auto-attacking to lower his cooldowns. If you're not doing that, he's not going to be very efficient. And so something like Redemption is going to make him very squishy. You can get things like Frozen Heart, which is what a lot of people have been doing, and that does scale pretty well with him over time, but there are some situations where that can be kind of awkward as well. Because it's going to cost more than a lot of other support items. It's not going to have any benefit to plus healing and shielding, which he really likes a lot because he's got his shield off his W. He's obviously got his heal off of his Q. And so he wants plus healing and shielding. He wants HP because I believe his shield also scales off of HP, but he also wants armor because his W scales off of armor. And also you're going to be in close combat, so you want armor. So, but he also wants CDR. So he wants plus healing and shielding, health, armor, CDR. Most of the time. And so it's just really awkward to find a combination of items that's affordable, that's going to keep you on curve, that's going to allow you to have momentum to contest dragons, scuttles, rift heralds, all these mid-game things without losing too much tempo. And so it's just really awkward finding the right kind of items that you want in the right kind of situation. Also, Guardian is kind of awkward as well, because usually a lot of Guardian users, you want to try to force fights in the lane around your Guardian cooldown. So if you're playing I don't know, something like Rakan, and you're taking Guardian, you want to go in. When your Guardian's on cooldown, you want to go in with your W and try to start a fight and really leverage that shield, versus a lot of times in lane with Taric, you're just going to get poked, and the Guardian's just going to proc randomly, and you're not going to have it when you need it. And so that's kind of awkward, but that's the only rune he can really take. Back in the day, he did take Unsealed Spellbook, but they've nerfed it and changed it where it's not as good on him. So anyways, that's why we don't see more Taric in solo queue. He's okay, but he's got kind of some of these problems. Although, you know, once again, with the hard engage, the Jarvans, the Hecarims and stuff like that, he is becoming a little bit more viable. Okay. Now, people might ask, well, why does he have a high win rate? And that's because he's used in abuse cases most of the time. So he's used as like in a lot of funnel comps. You'll see like Taric top plus Master Yi jungle, or you might see like Taric middle plus, you know, something like that, either a Yi or a Kindred or something like that in the jungle, or Sona Taric bot lane. So he's used in a lot of these kind of like cheese abuse type of comps. So he's going to have a high win percentage because he's not used in most ordinary comps. He's used in like booster strats, basically. So are they going to nerf this? I suspect if this continues to be popular in pro play, I would not be surprised if they nerf this. It is kind of cool, but they really like, it's just difficult to balance around this. And it just feels kind of abusive, and they have a history of nerfing this type of stuff. You know, they nerfed Relic Shield when 80 carries were getting Relic Shield. They nerfed Frostfang when there were champions top that were doing this type of thing. I don't remember the champion that popularized this Frostmancy top. I don't remember if it was like Victor or what that really like made this abusive the first time. But I think they'll nerf it. And what the most likely thing is, they'll make it tier 3 to where you have to get to tier 3 before you can farm at all, or just say you can never farm. If you farm at all, it's going to lower the charges, because as Sona, as Lulu, as like real supports that are taking Frostfang, you should never be farming. I mean, maybe they could lower the penalty on it, to where it's, you know, you're not penalized as much, but just make sure that you are missing some farm if you're getting frost charges. Or, I mean, they could go really hard and say something like you're only getting a percentage of gold off of minion farm if you do this. So you're only getting like 10 gold per minion. That's a clunky way of doing it. That's kind of how they tried to stop the jungle funneling with the jungle items. But that could work. I think another thing, now some people actually do not even use Klepto. So the LCK recently was using Talia Pantheon support, and they're using Talia 80 carry and Pantheon support, and they weren't even using Klepto, but they're using the Frostfang. So I still think this can be abusable without Klepto, but one thing that really makes this work for Sona is that she can abuse Klepto so well. So I think for ranged, they could nerf it. You also see Klepto abuse in like top lane sometimes. It's just an item. You're even seeing it sometimes on like LeBlanc and things now in laning phase. So there are several champs that are starting to abuse Kleptomancy. I think one thing that they could do, particularly for range, is lower the gold bag value. So say if you're ranged, you're going to be losing like 50% of the gold value off of gold bags, or a certain percentage. Or maybe if you're ranged, the drop rate gets lowered. Maybe 50% is too harsh, but maybe you get 25%, or you lose 25% of the gold value. So normally, you know, in the laning phase, if right now you're getting like 400 gold in the laning phase off of Klepto, maybe it goes down to 300. And they could do that by either making the gold bags drop less frequently, or maybe the gold bags don't come online and you can't even get them until like 6 to 8 minutes in the game or something like that. So you can get them later in the game, but it doesn't give you as much momentum early in the game. Maybe you could only get like potions, wards, and those little mini flasks or whatever early, and then you could start getting gold bags later. I'm not sure, but something like that to lower the gold bag value, because I think that like the potions are okay. It gives you a nice advantage, but it's something that you actually have to leverage. You have to use in the laning phase. Like gold bags is just straight gold in your pocket, right, that you get. But the potions are a little more sneaky, right? You have to be taking smart trades. You have to really use them. You have to be actively looking to punish the enemy to force bad backs and really leverage those potions. So I think the potions are not really as dangerous as the gold bags, because gold bags are just straight like gold in your pocket. So I think that's what they probably should nerf, is lower gold bag value. They could also do for range, you just have a lower proc rate in general. So you just don't get stuff as often if you're ranged. I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like most melee champions that use this abuse it too much, like Ilaoi and stuff like that. Because usually it's just harder to proc it. Like you have to land specific abilities, like Ilaoi, you have to land her tentacle grab, or I know Fiora was using this. I guess Gangplank is an abuse case with this, but I think that's probably how they'll end up nerfing it. It's just lowering something about the gold bag value. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Check out the rest of the stuff on the channel as well. We have a ton of guides, tier lists, coaching sessions, and I stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a super friendly community. I try to respond as much as I can to the comments, both on stream and in the video. So if you have any questions about this, or you want to add on anything, just let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to hear from you. And that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'll see you next time.